The man who wanted Elena Vitale dead was sitting in her dark living room, holding her apartment key between two fingers. She stopped 3 steps inside the door. The lock clicked shut behind her with a soft metallic snap, louder than the traffic murmuring 20 floors below. Only the amber light above the kitchen stove was on, throwing a thin glow across polished hardwood and the stranger's black shoes. Ronan Kearney sat in her favorite chair as if he owned it, one ankle resting over his knee, charcoal suit immaculate, white shirt open at the throat. A narrow edge of black and gray tattooing disappeared beneath his collar, and another surfaced at his wrist when he turned the key slowly in his hand. Elena knew his face before he spoke. Every Italian family with old connections in Chicago knew the Kearney name, and everyone knew the eldest son. Irish money, Irish muscle, a future built on businesses that looked respectable from the street and became something else once the doors closed. "You're difficult to find," Ronan said. His voice was quiet enough that Elena had to listen. That made it worse. She set her purse on the console table without taking her eyes off him. The apartment smelled faintly of coffee grounds from that morning and the citrus cleaner she used on Sundays. Underneath, it was something unfamiliar. Cedar, cold night air, the leather of Ronan's gloves lying beside him. Most people call first. Most people aren't looking for the woman who got their brother killed. Elena's fingers stopped against the strap of her purse. Ronan rose. He was taller than she expected, easily over 6 feet, built with the controlled heaviness of someone who never needed to advertise what he could do. His shoes crossed the floor without hurry. No shouting, no dramatic threat. That calm told her he had already decided why he was there. "Patrick Kearney," he said, 29 years old, dead 11 months ago, 3 days after federal investigators received financial records from an account you audited. Elena's jaw tightened. "I didn't send those records." That's what guilty people say. And stupid men believe the first story they're handed. Ronan stopped 6 feet from her. The refrigerator hummed behind Elena. Somewhere in the hallway outside, an elevator bell chimed and faded. His gaze sharpened, but she saw no surprise in it. "Careful. You broke into my apartment to kill me, Mr. Kearney. I think we passed careful about 10 minutes ago." He reached inside his jacket. Elena's pulse jumped once, hard enough to feel at the base of her throat, but she didn't move toward the door. Ronan noticed. Whatever he had expected from her, it had not been stillness. He withdrew a photograph instead and dropped it onto the table. Elena recognized herself leaving her former accounting firm, captured beneath fluorescent parking garage lights. A date was stamped in the corner. "For days before Patrick died. I've spent 11 months finding you," Ronan said. "You have 5 minutes to convince me I found the wrong person." Elena looked at the photograph, then at him. His expression didn't change, but his right hand remained loose beside his jacket, ready. She could hear the second hand on the wall clock. 1 tick. 2. 3. She opened her purse slowly. Ronan's shoulders tightened. Elena pulled out a small black USB drive and placed it between them. "Then you're going to need more than 5 minutes." His eyes dropped to it. "What is that?" Elena slid the drive across the wood until it touched his hand. "Proof that whoever sent you after me knew exactly what you'd do." For the first time that night, Ronan Kearney stopped looking at Elena like a woman he had come to kill. He looked at her like she had just become the most dangerous person in Chicago. Ronan did not touch the USB at first. He stared at it while the kitchen clock clicked behind Elena and a siren drifted somewhere far below the apartment windows. Then he picked it up, crossed to her dining table, and pulled a slim black laptop from the leather case he had left beneath the chair. The screen washed his face in cold blue light as the machine powered on. "Sit." Elena stayed standing. "If you want to understand what's on that drive, you need me beside you." Ronan's eyes lifted. The silence between them had changed. 5 minutes ago, he had controlled every inch of the room. Now the small piece of plastic in his hand had forced him to listen. He inserted the drive. A password prompt appeared. Elena stepped closer, the hardwood cool beneath her bare feet after she kicked off her heels, and typed 12 characters without letting him see the pattern. A directory opened. No dramatic photographs. No names written in red. Just spreadsheets, audit logs, server timestamps, and transaction histories. The kind of evidence most men like Ronan ignored until it ruined them. "This was the account your brother's investigators received," Elena said, tapping one column. Ronan leaned over her shoulder, his suit sleeve brushing the chair. The faint scent of cedar returned, mixed now with the metallic warmth of the laptop fan. I audited it on March 8th. I closed my access at 6:14 p.m. She opened the internal log. The file sent to federal investigators was created at 2:37 the next morning. Ronan's jaw shifted once. You could have logged in remotely. Not with my credentials. Elena clicked another folder. Look at the authorization chain. He did. The room stayed so quiet she could hear the refrigerator compressor kick on. A second user ID had approved the changes. Elena did not tell him whose it was. Not yet. Part of surviving men like Ronan was knowing when information became leverage. Someone copied my work, altered the account trail, then attached my employee's signature to the export, she said. Whoever framed me understood the system well enough to make your family blame the obvious person. Ronan closed the laptop halfway. You expect me to believe you kept this for 11 months and never went to the police? Elena reached past him and opened it again. Your brother died after financial records reached federal investigators. You think I was going to walk into a precinct carrying proof that somebody inside an organized crime network manipulated evidence? You ran. I stayed alive. He turned sharply and caught her wrist before she could move away. His grip was firm, controlled, not crushing. Black and gray ink disappeared beneath his cuff as his thumb pressed against her pulse. If this is forged, then kill me. The word stopped him. Elena held his gaze. But if it's real, and you kill me tonight, you'll be doing exactly what the person who framed me wants. Ronan released her. He moved to the window and pulled the curtain aside 2 inches. Neon from the street reflected across the glass, outlining his shoulders. Elena watched his attention shift from the room to the building opposite, then to the alley 20 stories below. He was no longer hunting only her. He was recalculating the threat around her. When he turned back, something colder had settled into his expression. Pack a bag. Elena did not move. No. Ronan stepped toward her. You don't understand your position. I understand it perfectly. You came here to decide whether I lived. Now you need me alive. That landed. She saw it in the half-second pause before his next step. Ronan picked up the USB, slid it into his inside pocket, and reached for his coat. Then here's the new arrangement. You come with me voluntarily, or I take you somewhere secure myself. You have 60 seconds to choose which version of tonight you want. Elena used 16 of Ronan's 60 seconds to disappear into her bedroom, pull on black jeans, trade her blouse for a dark sweater, and shove a charger, passport, and clean shirt into a canvas overnight bag. When she returned, Ronan was standing by the apartment door with one hand inside his coat, listening to the hallway. The ceiling vent pushed out dry heat that carried the faint, dusty smell of the building's furnace, while an elevator cable groaned somewhere behind the wall. Done? He asked. Not even close. Elena dropped the bag beside the table and reopened the laptop. Ronan's stare hardened. You're wasting time. No. I'm buying it. She pulled the USB from his coat pocket before he could stop her and plugged it back in. His hand closed around her forearm a second later, but this time Elena did not challenge the grip. She simply pointed at the screen. You saw that the audit file was altered after I lost access. That only proves I was framed. It doesn't prove why. Ronan released her slowly. Elena opened the transaction history and began filtering thousands of entries by date, routing bank, and authorization level. Numbers vanished in waves. The laptop keys clicked beneath her fingers, sharp and fast in the dim apartment. Ronan moved behind her, blocking part of the stove light, and watched the columns compress until only 11 transfers remained. These weren't ordinary laundering transfers, Elena said. They were disguised as consulting retainers, legal expenses, campaign services. Clean categories. Dirty routing. She highlighted the same alphanumeric marker appearing in each payment memo. BH-17. BH-21. BH-03. What does BH stand for? Ronan asked. Elena opened an archived reconciliation sheet, then another. She did not answer until she had dragged one hidden worksheet into view. At the bottom of the screen sat 2 words that had never appeared in the official file. Black Harbor. Ronan's breathing changed almost imperceptibly. Elena noticed because everything else had gone still. You know it, she said. No, that wasn't a question. His eyes stayed on the screen. It's nothing. Elena turned the laptop toward herself and began typing again. Ronan caught the lid before she could continue and forced it halfway down. Enough. If it's nothing, why stop me? His jaw flexed. The refrigerator clicked off, leaving only the muted traffic 20 floors below. Elena pulled the laptop free and opened an encrypted authorization map she had built months ago. Most names were hidden behind employee codes, but one approval tier stood above the rest. K. Exec 4. She tapped it. This user signed off on every Black Harbor transfer above $250,000. Same person, same clearance. Ronan looked away for 1 second too long. Elena followed his gaze to the family crest engraved on the silver cuff link at his wrist. Kearney Executive Access, she said. Senior level. Ronan's voice dropped. That code could belong to half a dozen people. Then give me the names. He did not. Elena stood, zipped her bag, and slung it over her shoulder. The balance in the room had shifted again. Ronan had entered her apartment as the man deciding whether she deserved to live. Now he was the one withholding something. You wanted proof I wasn't the enemy, Elena said. I gave you enough to know I'm not your simplest answer. Ronan closed the laptop and stared at the Black Harbor label still reflected faintly across the darkened screen. Then he pulled out his phone, deleted a message he had already drafted, and slipped it back into his pocket. We're not going to my family. Elena watched him unlock the door. Where are we going? Ronan looked at her, the decision already made. Somewhere no Kearney knows to look. The first bullet shattered the apartment window before Elena reached the hallway. Glass burst inward with a sharp crack, scattering across the hardwood like ice under the amber kitchen light. Ronan moved before the sound finished echoing. He caught Elena around the waist and drove both of them behind the kitchen island as a second round punched into the wall where her head had been a heartbeat earlier. White plaster dust drifted through the room, bitter and chalky in the air. Stay down. Wasn't planning to stand up. Ronan drew a compact handgun from beneath his jacket and killed the stove light with his free hand. Darkness swallowed the apartment except for Chicago's neon glow bleeding through the broken window. Cold air rushed inside, carrying exhaust fumes, wet concrete, and the distant pulse of a car horn 20 floors below. Elena pressed her shoulder against the cabinet. That's not one of your men? Ronan looked at her once. If it were, you'd already be dead. Another shot struck the countertop. Stone splintered near Ronan's hand. He pulled Elena lower, then angled a polished steel serving tray toward the window, using its reflection to study the building across the street without exposing himself. Shooters elevated, he said. Probably the parking structure. 200 yards, maybe less. Elena glanced toward the front door. Then we leave. Hallway could be covered. And sitting here improves our odds. Ronan's mouth tightened. She was already moving. Staying below the windows, Elena crawled toward the utility closet beside the kitchen and yanked it open. Mops, detergent, and a folding ladder rattled against one another. She pushed them aside and exposed a narrow maintenance panel. Building renovation last year, she whispered. Every unit on this floor has access to the service corridor. Ronan stared at the panel. You never mentioned that. You never asked how I planned to escape you. That earned her half a second of silence. Then Ronan crossed to her, ripped the panel free, and looked into the unlit passage beyond. Warm mechanical air rolled out, smelling of hot metal and dust. Go. Elena climbed through first, canvas bag scraping against the narrow frame. Ronan followed and pulled the panel shut behind them just as another distant crack sounded from the apartment. The service corridor was barely 3 feet wide, boxed in by pipes that ticked with heat. Emergency bulbs painted the concrete walls a dull red. Elena led him 50 feet to a steel stairwell door. Ronan caught her shoulder before she opened it, listened, then eased it outward. Empty stairs spiraled downward. Their footsteps rang against metal as they descended 2 floors at a time. On 18, the stairwell door suddenly jerked open. A man in a dark jacket stepped through, one hand already reaching inside his coat. Ronan shoved Elena behind the concrete wall and slammed the door into the stranger, forcing him backward without firing. The man stumbled, recovered, and fled through the corridor before Ronan could close the distance. Ronan started after him. Elena grabbed his sleeve. He wants you chasing him. Ronan stopped. A second later, footsteps thundered from somewhere below. More than one set. He looked down the stairwell, then back toward Elena. For the first time since entering her apartment, his weapon was no longer pointed at the woman he had hunted for 11 months. It was positioned between her and everyone else. Garage, he said. They changed direction, climbed one floor, crossed through a laundry room humming with industrial dryers, and exited through a rear service elevator into a private parking level. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. Ronan unlocked a black SUV 50 yards away. Elena ran beside him, shoes striking cold concrete, while a car alarm suddenly began screaming somewhere behind them. They reached the SUV. Ronan opened the passenger door, pushed the overnight bag inside, then stopped Elena before she climbed in. Listen carefully. His voice was low, stripped of the calm threat he had used in her apartment. Someone knew exactly where you were before I removed you from this building. That means whoever framed you isn't waiting to see whether I kill you. Elena held his gaze. They're making sure you do. Ronan looked toward the ramp where headlights had just appeared. He raised his gun, stepped in front of her, and made the choice neither of them could take back. Not anymore. Ronan fired once into the concrete beside the approaching headlights, and the sedan braked hard enough to send its tires shrieking across the garage. He did not wait to see who was inside. He shoved Elena into the passenger seat, slammed the door, and crossed behind the SUV as another vehicle appeared at the far end of the level. The engine roared beneath them a second later. Fluorescent lights streaked across the windshield while Ronan cut between parked cars, clipped the exit gate with the front bumper, and shot down the ramp into downtown Chicago. Elena braced one hand against the leather dashboard as the SUV fishtailed onto the street. Cold air leaked through the damaged seal around her door, carrying the smell of gasoline and wet pavement. "Where are you taking me?" she asked. Ronan checked the mirror. "Away from your apartment." That wasn't an answer. "It's the only one you're getting." He drove south for 6 blocks, doubled back north, then crossed the river before turning into an underground parking structure beneath a luxury hotel. Elena watched him swap license plates from a compartment under the cargo floor, wipe the steering wheel with a cloth, and transfer the laptop and her overnight bag into a gray sedan waiting 2 rows over. Every movement was practiced. Efficient. "You plan this. I plan exits. For dates too." His eyes flicked toward her. "Get in." 20 minutes later, the skyline had thinned behind them. Brick warehouses gave way to quieter streets, then older industrial blocks near the river where sodium lamps cast long orange pools across empty pavement. Ronan stopped beside a converted printing warehouse with blacked-out windows and a steel garage door. There was no sign, no visible camera, no name on the buzzer. He entered a code, waited for the lock to release, and drove inside. The door rolled shut behind them with a heavy mechanical rumble. Elena stepped out into air that smelled faintly of concrete, dust, and machine oil. The building was warmer than outside, almost too warm, with exposed brick walls, steel beams, and a single row of pendant lights glowing over a living area built into the center of the old warehouse. There was a kitchen, 2 closed bedrooms, a wall of security monitors, and no obvious second exit. Ronan set her bag on the counter. Elena reached for it. He took her phone first. "Give that back." "No." He held it out of reach, powered it off, removed the SIM card, and placed both pieces in separate metal drawers. "You don't get to confiscate my life because someone shot at us. Someone found you once. I'm not giving them a second chance through a location ping, cloud backup, or careless call." Elena stepped between him and the drawers. "You dragged me out of my home, drove me across the city, and now you're locking up my phone. There's a word for that. Kidnapping." Ronan said. "I'm familiar with it." She stared at him. He stared back. The refrigerator behind them clicked on, filling the silence with a low mechanical hum. Elena reached suddenly for the drawer. Ronan caught her wrist, but she twisted free, grabbed the SIM card, and made it 3 steps before he blocked the hallway. She turned toward the garage. He was there first. "Move." "No, you decided 10 minutes ago that I wasn't your target anymore. I decided I wasn't letting someone else kill you before I know why my brother died." Elena's fingers closed around the tiny SIM card until its edge bit into her palm. "So I'm still your prisoner." Ronan leaned against the steel door, dark suit rumpled now, one cuff torn enough to reveal more black and gray ink running over his forearm. "Until I know whether you're innocent, useful, or both." Elena looked toward the security monitors. For exterior feeds, 1 garage, 1 rear corridor. She counted doors, cameras, angles. Ronan noticed. "Don't." Elena slipped the SIM card into her pocket. "Don't what?" "Start planning how to leave." She walked toward the nearest bedroom and picked up her bag. Too late. Ronan's voice followed her across the concrete floor. Then understand this before you try. You can hate me, fight me, lie to me, and spend every hour looking for a way out. But until we know who put you in my crosshairs, that door stays locked. Elena stopped with her hand on the bedroom handle and looked back at him. Fine. She pulled the Black Harbor USB from her sweater pocket and held it up between two fingers. Ronan's expression changed. He had believed it was still in his coat. Elena closed her fist around it. Then now you're locked in here with me. Ronan waited until Elena closed the bedroom door before allowing himself to lean against the kitchen counter. The movement was small, but she caught it through the narrow gap before the latch clicked. 10 minutes later, when she stepped back into the warehouse, his jacket was folded over a chair and his white shirt lay open on the counter beside a first aid kit. A shallow cut crossed the outside of his shoulder where flying glass from the apartment window had caught him. Nothing serious, but blood had dried dark against his skin. Under the pendant lights, Elena finally saw what his tailored suits had hidden. Black and gray tattoos covered him from the collarbones downward, flowing across both shoulders, down his arms, over his chest and ribs in dense, connected patterns. Celtic knots disappeared into darker geometric lines. An old sailing ship curved along one side, and a black stag stood beneath his left collarbone. None of it looked decorative in the casual sense. The work was deliberate, layered, almost like armor built beneath the clothes. Ronan caught her looking. Finished staring? Elena set the USB on the counter between them. I was deciding whether the tattoos make you more intimidating or just more committed to bad decisions. He almost smiled. Almost. Then he poured antiseptic onto gauze and pressed it against the cut. His jaw locked. The sharp medicinal smell spread through the warm warehouse, mixing with coffee from the pot Elena had started while he was checking the security feeds. You missed glass, she said. I didn't. There's a piece near your shoulder blade. Ronan reached back, failed to get the angle, and tried again. Elena watched for 3 seconds before taking the tweezers from his hand. Sit down. I don't need help. Apparently, you need longer arms. He looked at her as if refusing assistance were a matter of principle, then sat on the edge of a steel stool. Elena stood behind him beneath the bright counterlight. The fragment was tiny, shining against his skin. She steadied his shoulder with 2 fingers and removed it cleanly. Ronan did not flinch, but the muscles along his back tightened beneath the tattooed lines. There. She dropped the glass into the metal tray with a faint ping. Try not to get shot at again. It's inconvenient. That was your apartment. And somehow you made it sound like my fault. Elena reached for the antiseptic. Ronan caught her wrist, more reflex than threat this time, then released it immediately. The pause between them lasted just long enough to become noticeable. She cleaned the cut and covered it with a bandage. The stag, she said, nodding toward the tattoo beneath his collarbone. Family symbol? Ronan buttoned his shirt halfway, but stopped before covering it completely. Patrick drew it when he was 15. Elena's hand froze over the discarded gauze. Ronan picked up the coffee she had poured and stared into the dark surface instead of drinking. He was terrible at drawing, he said. The tattoo artist spent 4 hours making it recognizable. There was no smile now. Elena looked at the stag again. 11 months of hunting her had not started with money, territory, or pride. It had started with a brother whose sketch Ronan had chosen to carry on his body forever. She slid the USB toward him. Then stop treating me like the easiest answer. Ronan looked at the drive, then at Elena. I came to your apartment tonight with no plan to hear you out. The refrigerator hummed behind them. Somewhere inside the warehouse, a pipe knocked once against the brick. He finished buttoning his shirt, covering the tattoos piece by piece. Before you opened that door, I had already decided you were guilty. Elena did not move. Ronan's voice dropped. And I had already decided you weren't leaving alive. Elena held Ronan's gaze for 3 seconds, then reached across the counter and closed the laptop with a flat snap. The pendant lights above them buzzed faintly, and the warehouse heater pushed dry air across the concrete floor, carrying the sharp scent of antiseptic and burnt coffee. Then we're done pretending this is your investigation, she said. Ronan's hand settled beside the closed computer. Explain. You admitted you came to kill me. You admitted the evidence changed your mind. That means I'm no longer asking permission to survive. She picked up the Black Harbor USB and slipped it into her pocket. Ronan's eyes followed the movement. You want what's on that drive? Elena walked toward the security wall. 6 monitors showed empty streets, the garage entrance, the rear corridor, and the steel door he had locked behind them. She pointed to one screen. I want something first. You're bargaining from inside my safe house. And you're standing inside it without the only person who can make sense of Black Harbor. Ronan moved closer. The torn cuff of his shirt exposed a band of black and gray ink around his wrist, but the rest of the tattoos had disappeared beneath clean white fabric again, the armor hidden. What do you want? My father protected. Ronan's face changed by less than an inch. Elena still saw it. Your father has nothing to do with this. Neither did I, according to the evidence you just saw. She crossed to the metal drawer where he had locked away her phone and held out her hand. Give it back. No. Elena grabbed a heavy wrench from the utility shelf beside the monitors and brought it down against the emergency release cover near the garage controls. Plastic cracked. An alarm chirped once. Ronan caught her wrist before she could strike again. What the hell are you doing? Changing the terms. She twisted free and pulled the release lever halfway. A red warning light began flashing above the garage door. Somewhere inside the wall, gears engaged with a low mechanical growl. Ronan slammed the lever back into place. You open that door, you expose both of us. Exactly. His stare sharpened. Elena put the wrench down, slowly this time. You can keep me locked here, or you can keep this place secure. You don't get both unless we have a deal. The red light stopped flashing. Silence returned except for the soft whir of the monitors. Ronan exhaled through his nose and reached into the metal drawer. Instead of handing Elena her phone, he removed his own. Name: Marco Vitale. Address. She gave it to him. Ronan walked 10 feet away and made a call. His voice changed when the line connected. Colder, clipped, built for obedience. 2 men. Civilian clothes. No family insignia. Watch the house, the car, and every person who approaches him. He does not know you're there unless something happens. Elena listened to every word. And if anyone asks who gave the order, the voice on the other end said faintly. Ronan looked directly at Elena. They don't. He ended the call. Satisfied? Not yet. Elena reopened the laptop and set the USB beside it without plugging it in. You don't touch my father. Your family doesn't touch my father. Nobody uses him to make me cooperate. If that changes, Black Harbor stays encrypted. Ronan came to the opposite side of the table. And in return, I decrypt everything I can. I trace the authorization chain. I tell you who manipulated the records that put me in your sights. Ronan's fingers rested on the edge of the laptop. You're asking me to protect the family of a woman I intended to kill 6 hours ago. Elena pushed the USB across the steel surface until it stopped beneath his hand. No, I'm telling you what it costs to keep me helping you. He looked down at the drive, then back at her. The balance between them shifted once more, quieter than before, but heavier. Finally, Ronan picked up his phone again and typed a second message. Your father is under my protection until this ends. Elena slid the laptop toward herself, then unlocked the door. Ronan shook his head once. Not part of the deal. Elena's mouth tightened. Fine. She plugged in the USB. Then here's mine. From this moment on, you don't decide whether I'm useful. I do. By 2:13 a.m., Elena had turned Ronan's safe house table into a map of the building she had sworn never to enter again. Her former accounting firm occupied the 34th floor of a glass tower in the Loop, and according to the internal maintenance schedule still cached on her laptop, the overnight backup server would be wiped at 4 a.m. The blue-white glow of the screen sharpened the angles of Ronan's face, while the warehouse heater clicked behind them. Cold coffee sat untouched beside Elena's hand, its bitter smell mixing with warm dust from the vents. The USB proves someone altered my work, she said, circling a service entrance on the floor plan. The server proves what existed before they altered it. Ronan glanced at the clock. And you're certain it hasn't already been erased? No, she closed the laptop. That's why we're leaving now. He looked toward the steel garage door. You're not going inside. Elena picked up her coat. Then enjoy explaining the firm's accounting architecture to yourself. 28 minutes later, Ronan parked the gray sedan 2 blocks from the tower. Downtown Chicago had thinned to delivery trucks, late-night cabs, and the occasional train rattling above the street. Wind cut between the buildings hard enough to sting Elena's cheeks, carrying the smell of exhaust and damp concrete. Ronan handed her a black baseball cap. Cameras. I worked there 4 years. I know where they are. Knowing and avoiding are different things. You really hate not being the most informed person in the room. Tonight, I hate anyone being able to identify you. That stopped her for half a beat. Then she pulled the cap lower and followed him toward the loading entrance. Elena used an old vendor code to open the first door. Ronan bypassed the second after removing a narrow tool kit from his coat. Political heir, professional burglar, she whispered. Multitasking. The freight elevator smelled of steel, cardboard, and industrial cleaner. Its fluorescent tube flickered above them as they rode to 33, then took the fire stairs one level higher. Elena's old office was dark except for green emergency lights glowing along the carpet. Rows of glass partitions reflected their silhouettes back at them. Ronan moved first, checking every intersection before waving her forward. They reached the server room at 321. Elena swiped an expired badge. Red light. Again. Red. Problem? Ronan asked. They finally terminated my credentials. Efficient. 11 months late. She pulled off the plastic cover beside the reader, exposed the wiring, and crossed two contacts with a metal clip from her bag. The lock released with a soft click. Ronan stared at her. Accounting school? Chicago. Inside, cooling fans roared like distant traffic. The temperature dropped nearly 15 degrees, raising goosebumps along Elena's hands as she connected a portable drive to the backup terminal. A progress bar appeared. 12%. 24. Ronan stood at the door, watching the corridor. At 41%, the overhead lights snapped on. Elena froze. Somewhere beyond the glass walls, an elevator chimed. Security? She whispered. Ronan checked his watch. Too early for morning staff. Footsteps crossed the carpet outside. Elena's copy reached 58%. Ronan stepped into the server room and quietly locked the door behind him. The footsteps stopped on the other side. A shadow passed beneath the frame. Then came 3 deliberate knocks. Elena's hand hovered above the drive. 73%. Ronan moved between her and the door. Keep copying. The handle turned once. Twice. A man's voice came through the glass, calm and familiar enough to make Elena's fingers stop. Ms. Vitale, I know you're in there. Ronan looked at her. Elena stared back. The progress bar reached 89% as the voice continued. And if Ronan Kearney is with you, tell him he has exactly 2 minutes before this floor locks down. The progress bar hit 100% just as the magnetic lock outside the server room snapped into place. Elena yanked the portable drive free, and Ronan killed the monitor with one hard tap. Beyond the glass wall, the office lights had gone from emergency green to full fluorescent white, exposing every desk, hallway, and reflection across the 34th floor. Your 2 minutes are gone, the man outside called. His voice carried through the glass with unnerving calm. Ronan glanced toward the ceiling vents, then at the narrow service door beside the server racks. Backup route. Elena already had the latch open. Maintenance bridge. It connects to the conference wing. Cold air blasted from the server room as they slipped through. Fans roared behind them, and the metal grating beneath Elena's shoes vibrated with every step. Ronan stayed half a pace behind her, one hand near his coat, scanning each junction while the building's security system chirped somewhere overhead. They emerged behind a paneled wall inside an executive conference room. The air smelled of stale coffee and lemon furniture polish. Elena crossed to the far window, pulled back the blackout shade, and looked down 34 stories at the narrow alley below. No, Ronan was already checking the door. Agreed. The handle rattled from the hallway. Elena grabbed a rolling presentation card, shoved it sideways beneath the door lever, and pointed toward a second exit concealed behind an acoustic partition. That goes to records. They moved. The conference room door slammed once behind them, then again. The cartwheels squealed against the carpet, but held. In the records room, Elena climbed onto a storage cabinet and pushed open a ceiling access panel. Ronan stared up at the dark opening. You've done this before? Quarterly audits make people creative. She hauled herself into the crawl space. Ronan followed, and together they crossed above 3 offices before dropping into an empty copy room near the stairwell. By the time the lockdown alarm began pulsing through the floor, they were already descending. 40 minutes later, the gray sedan rolled back into the warehouse garage. Neither spoke until the steel door closed behind them. Elena went straight to the table, plugged in the recovered drive, and opened the untouched backup image from the night Patrick died. Ronan stood across from her, coat still on, his attention fixed on every movement of her hand. "No filtering," he said. "No hiding anything from me." Elena looked up. "Then don't lie to me when you recognize something." She began sorting folders by timestamp. Most contained ordinary invoices, payroll reports, and archived client records. Then one directory appeared that had not existed on her USB, security_exports. Ronan's posture changed. Elena opened it. A grid of photographs filled the screen, time-stamped by a parking garage camera connected to the firm's compliance system. The first images showed empty concrete lanes. The next showed a black sedan. Then Patrick Kearney stepped into frame. Ronan moved closer. Patrick was unmistakable. Same dark hair, same Kearney profile, younger and less guarded. He stood beside the sedan speaking to a woman in a pale coat. Elena enlarged the image. The woman turned just enough for the camera to catch her face. Ronan's hand came down flat on the table. "No," Elena zoomed in again. "You know her?" He did not answer. "Ronan." His eyes stayed locked on the photograph. "Her name is Sofia Belandi." Elena recognized the surname immediately. Belandi meant Italian territory, Italian money, and a family the Kearneys had treated as rivals for years. The timestamp glowed beneath the image. 9:43 p.m. Less than 4 hours before Patrick was killed. Elena leaned back from the screen. "Your brother met the enemy the night he died." Ronan's gaze hardened, but this time it was not aimed at her. He reached for the laptop, stopped, then turned it back toward Elena instead. "Find out why." Ronan shut the laptop and took the recovered drive before Elena could stop him. The click of the lid sounded unnaturally loud in the warehouse, followed by the low hiss of the heater and rain beginning to tap against the blacked-out windows high above the brick walls. "What are you doing?" Elena asked. "Checking whether you've been steering me toward the Bell Landis." He crossed to the security desk and slipped the drive into a locked drawer. Elena followed. "You watched me copy that server. I watched you choose where to look. So we're back to this." She stepped into his path. "Every time the evidence stops pointing at me, you invent another reason it still might." Ronan's gaze dropped briefly to the pocket where she kept the Black Harbor USB. "You knew enough to keep records for 11 months. You knew enough to disappear before I found you. And somehow you never mentioned Patrick meeting Sofia Belandi." "Because I didn't know." "Prove it." Elena laughed once, without humor. "That's convenient. How exactly does someone prove what they didn't know?" Ronan pulled out his phone. The screen cast a pale rectangle across his hand, and the black and gray tattoo visible beneath his torn cuff. He opened a secure message thread. Elena caught only a few words before he angled it away. "Vitale. Active. Confirmed." Her eyes narrowed. "What is that?" "The order that went out when I found you." The warehouse seemed to contract around them. Rain drummed harder against the roof. Elena looked from the phone to his face. "You told other people to kill me?" "I told them where you were." "Same difference." She reached for the phone. Ronan caught her hand, but Elena drove her shoulder into his chest and knocked the device loose. It skidded across the concrete. She got there first. Ronan closed the distance before she could unlock it, but instead of taking it from her, he stopped. "Read it." Elena stared at him. "Go ahead." His voice was flat. "You wanted to know what I believed about you. Read it." She looked down. The thread showed a photograph of her, her old office address, her apartment, her car, and a final instruction from Ronan sent hours earlier. "Do not interfere. She is mine." Elena's thumb tightened around the phone. "You marked me like property. I kept everyone else away because I intended to handle it myself. That doesn't improve the sentence." "No." Ronan took the phone back, opened the thread, and typed while she watched. "Cancel Vitale order. No contact. No surveillance. No action without my direct authorization." He pressed send. Replies appeared almost immediately. "Understood." "Confirmed." "Copy." Elena said nothing. Ronan opened a second encrypted channel and repeated the command. Then a third. Names she did not recognize disappeared beneath the same instruction. One by one, the machinery he had set in motion against her stopped. "There," he said. Elena folded her arms. "And I'm supposed to trust that?" "No." He slid the phone onto the table between them. "You're supposed to understand what changed." She looked at the device, but did not touch it. "You still think I'm hiding something." "I know you are." "Based on what?" Ronan stepped closer, stopping several feet away this time instead of crowding her. Because people don't spend 11 months running with evidence that could save them unless showing it would cost them something else. Elena's eyes flicked toward her bag. Barely a movement. Ronan saw it. There. His voice softened. That. She turned away and reached for her coat. You don't get every answer because you finally decided not to have me killed. Ronan picked up the recovered drive and placed it on the table beside her hand. Maybe not. Elena looked down at it. Then why give this back? Because whatever you're hiding, I no longer believe you killed Patrick. Her fingers stopped on the drive. Behind them, the security monitors washed the room in cold blue light while rain traced silver lines down the high windows. Ronan took his gun from beneath his jacket, removed the magazine, cleared the chamber, and set both pieces on the opposite counter, well beyond his reach. But I'm going to find out why you were willing to let me hate you for 11 months instead of telling me the whole truth.